In this video, I'll be talking about natal moon in Scorpio in the 8th house and what this placement means for you if you have it in your chart. And with that being said, what the moon represents is it represents our emotions, our fulfillment, and how we find security in the world and in relationships, because it shows our emotional needs. It also represents our upbringing, how we were raised, and how that influenced our approach to security and to fulfillment. And it also represents whether we were fulfilled on an emotional level, or how we feel nurtured and stuff like that. It also shows our living situation. So generally speaking, with the moon in Scorpio, they prefer, when it comes to living situations, they prefer like a darker home, something that's more secluded, more secretive, and more private. They like a lot of shade, and that's because Scorpio is all about secrecy and privacy. So they'll look for that when it comes to their house or like their home life. Now also, Scorpio is about discomfort in general, and it's about psychologically complex situations. So with the moon being in Scorpio, it shows somebody that has become comfortable with uncomfortable situations, or non-ideal living situations, or toxic situations and relationships, or I should say ways of relating to others that are due to certain insecurities that other people had, or also that they have in their selves. So like, oftentimes the way that you were raised by parents could have involved, it could have been a unhealthy approach to how they had like a family, or how they related to each other and I'm talking about the parents. So and just the family and the people in the living situation that you were in. So ultimately, to me, when the moon is in the 8th house and in Scorpio, this shows somebody that had a complicated upbringing and just has a complicated relationship to emotions. They're very secretive about their emotions, and they might even suppress them or deny them to a certain extent, and focus more on, the logical aspects of life and on practical, things. But for the most part, there's like also an aspect of debilitation to this placement, because the moon is debilitated in Scorpio. So this just shows me that in the upbringing, there was a lack of fulfillment in a certain aspect. And the 8th house is about interpersonal dynamics, especially when it comes to resources. So these people needed like a deep bond with others, or with their parents, or with their mother in specific. And maybe that was denied, or she was not providing that. But there is, something complicated about their upbringing in a psychological sense. Now, Scorpio is also about needs. It's also about lack and desire. So when the moon is in Scorpio, this shows somebody that always feels a insatiable appetite for a certain thing, like for emotional fulfillment in a certain way. And it also can be about lack. So these people can have a feeling of lack in a certain way, especially when it comes to resources. And there's also this need to fight for things, because Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So there can be this unhealthy perception, or this approach to life, that you feel like you always need to fight for what it is that you need. And like, this could affect, the situations of security that you manifest. You can manifest, situations of lack with this placement, due to your mindset and what you feel you deserve. The 8th house is also the opposite of the second house. The second house is all about self-esteem. So when the moon is in the 8th house, this could be about this feeling like that you lack worth, or that you don't have enough resources or like value in the world. But ultimately, like, people that have the moon in Scorpio and in the 8th house, they have like a complicated relationship to needs and to the emotions. And a lot of times they feel like they need to manipulate things in order to get their needs met. That's really the main expression of this. So this could have been something that you learned from your parents as well, or like it was a trait that you picked up through descendants. Like you could have been born with like this trait from an ancestor or like a grandparent, especially. Most likely it's going to be grandparents, because that's where we get a lot of our traits from, that don't seem to come from our parents. Because like for the most part we'll be aware that it comes from our family, but for the most part we won't be exactly the same as our parents. Like we won't get the same traits as our parents. We'll usually take on from the grandparents' traits. So with that being said, you just learned a complicated relationship to needs, or like you feel like you need to control things in order to get your needs met, and you need to also fight for the things that you need, especially when it comes to resources. So Scorpio is also about shared resources and interpersonal forms of reliance. So these people are comfortable in shared situations of security or of resources, but usually, since it's in the 8th house, this can be debilitated forms of interpersonal reliance. So debilitated just means a bad approach, or like an unhealthy approach, or like a non-ideal situation. So these people can sometimes just get comfortable with codependent situations, or like situations where, you know, there's like a lack paradigm from both sides of how, you know, each one gets what they need from others. And for the most part too, these people have a difficulty, you know, revealing their needs, because they're very secretive and emotionally vulnerable. Because the moon in Scorpio shows somebody who feels things very deeply, and also who constantly feels a certain way. So they learn to hide the things that they care about in order to not become vulnerable or be able to be manipulated by others. And they, from doing this thing and from also having this tendency, they also gain a lot of psychological power or understanding of how to manipulate others, though, because they see the weaknesses of other people based on other people not being as secretive or as wise about the things that they care about. So anyways, with that being said, that basically summarizes what I wanted to talk about for this placement. It definitely showed that you may go through some sort of emotional transformation at some point in your life. At actually probably several points, like at several significant points of your life, you went through like a significant transformation of your living situation. And like you may have this tendency to always feel like you need to prevent things from ending, right? But whenever you have a significant turning point in your living situation or in your life, it creates like a emotional transformation where you become more wise, or you learn certain wisdom or lessons, because the sign that comes after Scorpio is Sagittarius. So honestly too, the last thing about this placement is I'm just getting this vibration of like darkness. You know, you could have dark emotions, or like emotions can just be heavy for you, because Scorpio goes very deep. So it's like emotions are healthy, are good in like healthy doses, right? But Scorpio moons may, you know, have this fatigue or like this tiring relationship to their emotions, because they're always feeling something, and it's like too heavy. But also they're very powerful, and especially in an emotional sense and in a conviction type of way. Like they're very convinced of themselves, and they cannot be gaslighted. They also have this ability to convince others, and to gaslight others, though. So they need to be careful, though, not to create, you know, self-destructive relationships or situations from that ability, and to try to use, you know, practicality or reasoning alongside how they feel, and, you know, have some balance or some temperance to the way that they try to convince others of their perception. So anyways, with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed and that this was insightful and that it resonated. If you did enjoy, or you saw yourself in some way in this video, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more content. If you'd like a natal chart reading where I cover all of your placements in a personalized video, which will be private and sent only to you, then check the link in my description to my Patreon, where I do a free natal chart reading for each of my Jupiter tier patrons. And for my lower tier, which is the moon tier, I have a 50% discount off of natal chart readings. I also have a link in my description. An email in my description if you'd like to contact me that way and book a reading, or if you have any other specific inquiries. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching and supporting in any way that you do, and I will talk to you guys sometime soon in another video. Peace.